He's going to have his people get
Blog
back to me.
Talk Radio.
All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and right alongside, of course, every week is LPGA professional and Legends Tour player Cindy Miller, and we are the hosts of the Women of Golf Show. Good morning and welcome, Cindy.
Good morning.
Very excited. This is our last show, of course, of the 2016 season as we wind down for the holidays, but it's going to be a good show. We've got a great guest coming up in the next little bit. Kathy Grayson, she's the sales manager and tournament division for the tournament division for Callaway Golf, and she's going to be joining us here shortly. And we've got a great discussion that we're going to start the show off. But very, very exciting. It's been a good year. We've had a lot of great guests and enjoyed bringing the show to you. We look forward to even more exciting guests and interesting topics for the next season. But let me just very quickly, Cindy, before we start, remind everybody to go to blogtalkradio.com, type in Women of Golf, and that will take you to our main page. And you can either listen to us live Tuesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time, or you can just scroll down to the on-demand section if you can't join us live. And all of the previously aired shows, including today's, will be there a little bit later. And you can listen to them at your convenience, or you can go to iTunes.com and under the podcast section, just type in again Women of Golf, and that will take you there. We'd love to hear from you. Look forward to some feedback on the show. You can do so by reaching out to either Cindy or I. Cindy's email is cindy@cindymillergolf.com, and mine is, of course, ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you. Phone in if you want as well. You can do so by calling area code 347-945-5855. And as I said, this is our final show. We're getting ready to wind down for the holidays, and we'll be coming back on, I believe, the second week of January, the second Tuesday of January, which I don't have the date in front of me off the top of my head, but we'll be coming back in. So we're going to take a little bit of a break as we celebrate the holidays with family and friends and so forth. And but we want you to come back here early in the new year as we get fired up again for a new season. But Cindy, lots of great things happening out there in golf, and you've got a great thing happening, especially as we get close to Christmas. Talk to them about your Learn to Hit It kit.
Yes, I have created the Learn to Hit It kit for those who need to practice their game and maybe get ready to plan a corporate event and don't really have time to get to the range or just don't feel like going to take lessons. It comes with a Callaway portable golf mat, foam Callaway practice balls, so you can hit balls in your living room and chip and putt, I guess you could, and my Golf 101 book, and a coupon for 10% off any Callaway golf club. So if you don't own golf clubs, you can purchase a 7-iron or a 5 hybrid, one golf club for a discount, and then you get access to my online Learn to Hit It course, which has got 10 modules to teach you how to hit it clean, airborne, and straight on purpose. And you can find it at learntohitit.com. The cost is $99 plus tax and shipping, so less than some private lessons for an hour.
And what a great and the beauty of it is, Cindy, too, is you can do it over and over again. You're not just much like and certainly not to knock lessons, but 1 hour lesson, as you said, for similar cost, that hour is done. Whereas this particular product that you're offering here, they can do it over and over again. So it's a continual opportunity to learn and ingrain some of those techniques and things that you're talking about in your Learn to Hit It kit. So a great price point, great value for the money, and a great gift for any time, but particularly for this Christmas season for that golfer in your family. So don't hesitate. Go to cindymillergolf.com or learntohitit.com as well. And you can get all the information there on how to purchase it for that special someone in your family. Great work as always, Cindy. Now, I want to start off our discussion. We don't have a lot of time because Kathy is going to be joining us here before we know it. But I wanted to have a discussion this morning on what I would classify as the 4 laws of perfect practice. And I don't know whether that title is necessarily appropriate because it talks about some other things. But here are some things that have sort of been isolated down, and I wanted to go through each one of them very quickly. The first one is deliberate practice is highly personalized. And what I mean by that, Cindy, is your practice session is unique to you. You want to design something that's going to give you the best opportunity of success. And, a lot of golfers out there are very comfortable practicing what works for them right now and are very hesitant to work on some of the areas of the game that they struggle with. For instance, if you're a good driver of the ball, everybody likes to stand up on that practice tee and hit drive after drive, but maybe they're not so good at bunker play. And so they don't get in the bunker and really work very much on that aspect of the game to sort of bring everything into process. So, if you were going to advise somebody, Cindy, to sort of develop their own practice routine, obviously, you'd want to work with them if the opportunity presents itself. But what would you suggest and recommend that they do?
Well, again, it depends on what they're trying to improve. And, are you trying to hit it closer? Are you trying to hit it straighter? Each person needs to know what they're doing, and then I think you need to take a piece of that and practice it until you become comfortable and it becomes second nature, and whether you're trying to feel it, see it, or hear it. And then, and only then, can you learn to own it. Mm-hmm. I just think it's very, very important for you to know what you're trying to work on and try to focus on one task at a time.
Right. And I think also, too, Cindy, I think an important component of sort of working on a practice routine, I think you have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I highly recommend for those of you out there that aren't currently working with a teacher or coach that you seek one out. And there's, literally thousands of them all over the country. And, find one in your area and talk to them and sit down and have a one-on-one with them and discuss what your goals are. And as you often said, Cindy, is why am I here? Why am I, playing golf? What's the reasons behind it? And help answer that question first and foremost, and that will help sort of direct your next steps. But I think you have to be willing to make yourself a little uncomfortable in practice, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. It's great if you're hitting, let's say you're hitting all of your wedges, within a specific distance, and you're hitting them all great. Well, maybe try and choke down on another iron. Take a 7-iron or an 8-iron. And choke down on it and try and hit that same distance because, you're not always going to be faced with that full wedge or that full shot. You might have some in-between shots. And if you've never practiced that, then you're not going to get very good at those shots. Agree, Cindy?
I totally agree. I'm not sure that you have to make yourself uncomfortable. I think you have to push yourself. Right. And I think you need to be very aware of what you're trying to do. And then I think you need to focus on that. And depending on your personality, do you tend to want to do more than one thing at a time, which would be, I'm guilty of that. I need to know my why. So, again, I'm trying to work on my game for the 2018 Women's U.S. Senior Open, okay? Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, what do I need to do? I need to become more comfortable, confident, consistent. I need to learn how to hit shots where it's scary. How scary are U.S. Opens? The most scary tournament you'll ever play in your life. It's so long, it's so hard. Well, if you think those thoughts, you're going to scare yourself. So now I need to say, okay, let's put myself in the situation where, you got a really tight line, you got to hit a 3-wood between, really tight bunkers and you got to fly a 210, So put yourself in those situations, which your notes say here, start playing for $5. Scare yourself at least once a day, I guess we could say.
Right. And believe me, we've all done that from time to time. out on the whether it be on the course or even on the practice tee sometimes doing things that we're not always. And that really brings me to number 2, which is kind of the same thing, is deliberate practice should push you just beyond your abilities. And that's what I was really, I guess, saying is sort of stepping out of your comfort zone. Again, I think a lot of amateurs fall into that category when they get out and are working on their game. They tend to stick with the things they know they're good at and really don't, get out and try things that they're not comfortable with. For instance, and just to give you an example, if you've been a master of hitting sort of the basic chips from clean lies, and that's great for confidence, but that doesn't mean that you should start going in and as they were putting it here in the comments, try and hit Phil Mickelson style flop shots from hard pan, because if you haven't really practiced that, and that's something definitely you don't want to take out in the golf course. Phil has been working on those areas for a very, very long time, and that's why he's able to do it with confidence. And I think what it is, it really boils down to is a lack of confidence for a lot of people. They're not comfortable hitting certain shots because they haven't seen success with it yet, so they don't want to get out there and practice. So they're going to stick with what's comfortable for them and just make the best of the situation. So I think you would agree as well. I mean, we need to step outside of our abilities and work on areas that maybe we're not so comfortable with, and maybe are not as confident with, in order to be able to grow our game too, I think, right?
Well, I think you touched on something. It's a belief factor, and that would go back to realistic expectations. So,
yep.
Again, you have to be able to assess the situation and say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Is this possible? Is this doable? And if it is, now I need to make a plan to achieve my goal. And in that plan, you're going to create the process. And once you create the process, then you're going to get the result.
Right, exactly. And number 3, deliberate practice must be repeated at a high volume. Now, this one here, I'm a little bit iffy with. I mean, I know it's a true statement, but not everybody, and we know this, Cindy, not everybody in today's game has the ability or the time like many of the pros do. As an example here, they're using Sam Snead in his day, hit golf balls all day, and actually got to the point where he would turn on his car headlights at night and even continue to practice. He'd wheel it up towards the practice tee area and shine it out so he could see where the balls were going. And that all sounds perfect, but first off, most courses nowadays would never let you do that. But secondly, people just don't have that kind of time. And, so we have to find a happy balance. So what could we suggest to somebody, do you think, that maybe can't go out there and spend 3 or 4 or 5 days a week like some of the pros do working on their game? How can they sort of get the biggest bang for their buck and really, make the best use out of their practice time?
They can buy the Learn to Hit It kit.
That's right.
And they can hit half shots in the basement with foam balls. I mean,
right.
Even if your basement ceiling is 8 feet tall, you can take a half a wedge and hit balls and learn to hit it clean, airborne, and straight. So there is no excuse. And even if you did this 3 times a week for 10 minutes, everybody's got 30 minutes a week to practice. And if you do the fundamentals, the whole mission of golf is to start the face square, swing it to the top, and bring it back to square. If you do that, the ball's going straight. Down to the ground, it's going in the air. And if the face is square, it's going straight. So, again, there is no excuse. So if you really want to work on your game and get better, you can.
Right.
There you go.
And by the way, you walked it very nicely into a promo for Learn to Hit It Kid. That was a great connection.
Well, it was a very low-hanging fruit, Ted. Thank you for that.
Yes.
But again, there is no excuse. I mean, you might say,
right.
I can't do this. Well, set the mat up in the basement or the back hall or the living room or the front porch, or, not everybody lives in Buffalo where it's snowing. So there is no excuse. And for $100, you can practice anytime you want and have access over and over to the same golf lessons on video, so you won't forget what you're trying to work on.
Yeah, and you know what? You're exactly right. I think that's a great way. And as you said, not everywhere gets snowed out like Buffalo, but with this Learn to Hit It kit, you're able to take your game indoor. And sure, you can't do everything, again, depending on your circumstances. If you have a low ceiling in that, you have to make some modifications perhaps. But there's really no excuse. And I think, what a lot of people do is they hunker down for the winter and they say, well, I'll get it back at the game next year. They come out, with a lot of rust and dust and things like that on their equipment and on their bodies. And they haven't really done anything or even really thought much about golf because they figure, well, it's out of season for them. And then they're starting from square one at the beginning of the season and spending the better part of that year that they could be out really enjoying themselves, trying to sort of retrain or relearn aspects of the game. And, with this kit that you're offering, Cindy, I mean, what a great way to keep yourself fresh. And again, 10 minutes a day, even if it's only 3 times a week, is better than just lumping yourself in that lazy boy chair or on the couch and not doing anything to work on your game. Right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
So we're not giving you any excuses here, folks. I mean, we want you to get better and we want you to go out. Obviously, first and foremost is to have fun. And the only way to do that is to put some effort into it. It's not going to just, come in a dream at night. You've got to get out there and put some effort into it. And the more effort you put into it, obviously, the better results you're going to get. That's why we're here.
You want to have fun. You want to have
Sure.
fun. And if you can hit it a little bit better, and the ball kind of goes where you're hoping it will, it's going to be way more fun.
Sure. And I think the biggest criticism I have for most of the folks out there is they're trying too hard for perfection. They're trying to hit it too perfect. They're trying to, get those perfect shots and have that perfect score in their mind, and they're not realistic in their expectations. It takes time. The pros didn't just wake up one morning and, win the Masters or the U.S. Open or what have you. They had to work at it, and that's not to say that that's what your goal might be, but if you want to improve, you've got to be willing to put that effort. The fourth and final one is deliberate practice requires continual and specific feedback, and that's highly important. Obviously, optimally, you want to work with a coach or a teacher, but failing that, you obviously want some kind of sound feedback, even if it's just a buddy coming up there, maybe videotaping your swing, or just kind of having a set of eyes to see. And, what was interesting, Cindy, about this one was Tiger Woods. And Hank Haney, of course, who was a coach of his at one point, had written a book. And in the book, he talks about it. It was called The Big Miss, by the way. And he was Woods' coach from 2004 to 2010. And he observed on the range that Woods would rarely hit more than 25 balls before taking a seat in his cart, and where he would stare silently and think about what he was doing. So he was mentally preparing himself. He wasn't just hitting ball after ball after ball. He was also taking time to mentally visualize what he wanted to do, visualize some of the areas that he was having difficulty in, and trying to, correct them in his mind before he went out and played his round. So he prepared mentally as well as physically, and a lot of people don't realize that. And Cindy, the importance of feedback, how important it is, when you're working with your students, that how critical that information you give them is going to help them down the road. Talk a little bit about how you try to make sure that the students are getting that important feedback from you.
Well, I'm going to change it back to the ball because, in my opinion, the ball is the greatest feedback. It's the evidence of what you've done with the club. So if you can understand the process and how to hit it clean, airborne, and straight on purpose, and then each shot you take or swing you make and attempt to hit the ball, it will tell you what you've just done. So if you can learn that, I mean, you need the feedback, the initial feedback first, so that you know why the ball goes where it goes. But then you can start to help yourself. I mean, yes, it's great to take lessons, and you need to understand that first off. But the ball will tell you what you did, and it never lies. So, yeah,
right.
That's the best feedback in the world, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, we wish it would lie once in a while, but unfortunately it doesn't, And you can attest to that, Cindy. There's been lots of times you've been out there and everything's just gelling together and working great, and there's other times, you've been out there on tour and things just didn't fall into place the way you wanted them. And as you said, the ball basically told the story. I want to talk about, Cindy, we've still got some time before Kathy joins us, because you mentioned about preparing for the Legends U.S. Open coming up here in 2018. I know you may not want to get into all the specific details, but there's obviously areas of your game that you want to really work on to help prepare. touch on a little bit about that. What are some things that are you're having difficulty with right now? And it doesn't matter what level of player you are, folks. Even the best of the best have their issues that they have to work on. What are some things that you're really wanting to work on in order to prepare to make it out there on the U.S. Women's Open, Senior Open?
Well, here's the facts. A couple weeks ago, I was at the LPGA CME Globe Championship, and I was helping a young player on the tour named Megan Kang with her putting. And we were trying to figure out whether she's linear or nonlinear and how you see lines, straight lines or curved lines. And what her dad said is she hits the ball fine. She doesn't putt very well, and she has two or three putts per round. And so I said, okay, so let's figure out if we can help her make more putts. And the second round of the tournament, she shot 67, and I believe she only hit 11 greens.
Wow.
And she had 25 putts. So I was busted myself by watching someone I was trying to help, and the truth came back in my face that, yeah, you can work on your swing all you want, but where should you be spending your time? Chipping and putting. Chipping and putting. Because those girls on the tour, if they hit 13 or 14 or 15 greens, and this is where I'm, I typically always hit at least 13 greens and shoot 74. So what's wrong with me? You can't really get a whole lot better. So the person that hits the most greens on tour, I think, averages 13 or 14 for the whole year. So I might be at 15 max. So those people, if they know how to putt, they're under par all the time. So there you go. I got to get a new putter. I got to work on my putting. I got to know how to lag putt. I got to, make putts within 10 feet. If you work on your putts inside 10 or 15 feet, you're going to make more of those. They're going to be for par or for birdie or for bogey, hopefully not, but maybe, because you're going to miss shots. So I busted myself by trying to help somebody else, and the truth came back in my face and said, you know what, go work on your chipping and putting.
Well said. And that's true. And it's interesting, sometimes I think we all as teachers, I think from time to time when we're working with a student, kind of come to that realization. We'll see something and think, you know what, that's what I need to do as well. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, Cindy, I think that a lot of folks out there really focus on areas of their game that really, and that's not to say they should never practice it, but they spend more time on the areas that they're very proficient at and very little time on areas of the game that they need the most help with. And they wonder why they're not improving. Like you said, I mean, you're not going to get too much better than hitting 13, greens in regulation. But if your putting is lacking, then you're not going to improve your score or your chipping or whatever the case may be. And I think you're exactly right. A lot of players out there have that same issue. And it was great that you were able to sort of have that epiphany, if you will, while working with somebody else and helping them in their game. So great work. Cindy, I see that Kathy's ready to come on board. So let me just do a very quick introduction, and then we'll bring our very special guest this morning on to join us. As I mentioned earlier in the show, folks, Kathy Grayson, the sales manager of the tournament division for Callaway Golf, is joining us this morning. She coordinates all sales and partnership opportunities with all of the tours and their events on the PGA, LPGA, USGA, and of course for the PGA of America, as well as other large key events held at sort of green grass events, if you will. She began her career in the golf industry after attending Ferris State University in 1985 under the guidance of Jay Overton at the Innisbrook Resort here in Florida. And she's worked in all aspects of the golf industry, including, just here's a few, she was the regional and strategic accounts manager for the Antigua Group in Scottsdale, director of retail for 4 of the top 100 clubs in Scottsdale, Arizona, and also marketing manager for Troon Golf Management Company and the tournament coordinator, for the 1992 PGA Championship and tournament director for the Florida Open and Louisiana Open golf tournament. So please welcome this morning with Cindy and I, our very special guest, Kathy Grayson.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're so glad you're here, but I have to read this thing here. Kathy's one stint outside the golf business was to accept the position of the Director of Volunteers, the United States Olympic Festival in 1994 prior to the Atlanta Olympics. You got to tell us about that first.
Oh, my gosh, that was so much fun. Yeah, what a great honor. We actually held the Olympic Festival, which was similar to the trials, what has kind of evolved into the trials in St. Louis and Southern Illinois, and it was quite the undertaking. We had, I think we had over 53 events throughout St. Louis and Southern Illinois, and over 23,000 volunteers.
Wow!
Oh my goodness!
So yeah, it was quite an undertaking, and it took a village to pull it off. But I truly enjoyed it, and would have loved to have gone on and worked for the Olympics in Atlanta. But loved St. Louis and wanted to get back to golf, so I ended up staying there.
Wow!
Fantastic. Kathy, this is Ted. I wanted to ask you just to maybe give us a little bit of an overview. Obviously, most people that play golf understand who and what Callaway is, but for those that maybe are a little bit newer to golf that may be tuning into the show this morning, just tell them, maybe give them a little bit of a general overview of the Callaway brand.
Well, Callaway has been around since the 1980s, started with Ely Callaway, and it's a tremendous company. The last 5 years, we've really gained a lot of momentum in the industry with change in leadership and bringing on Chip Brewer as our new CEO. He is, I can't say enough about him. He's phenomenal and has turned our company around. In the last probably 6 months, we've been number one in every category with the exception of the driver and the golf ball, and we are a close number 2 in golf ball now. And we expect to be number 1 with the launch of our new driver in January, which is a little top secret, so you'll have to wait to the Orlando show to hear more about that.
Okay. Of course.
Well,
and
I must confess, though, I'm getting fit for mine tomorrow.
Yeah, we have some special people that we've actually shown the driver to already, including our tour players and some of our better staffers. We are making the rounds right now with what we call the Epic Tour, which is similar to what we did last year with our Speed Fest, and different locations in the U.S. where they are getting a preview of the driver. I can tell you that it's revolutionary. There's been some revolutionary technology over the years with when Callaway first brought in the Big Bertha. And then, TaylorMade did the adjustable driver. So there's been little leaps of technology, and this is going to be a very big leap, and it's going to change the landscape of drivers again. So it's really exciting. We're super excited about it.
Wow.
We're excited.
I'm going to gain some yardage.
You know what? I actually saw it in person a few weeks ago. I was down at East Lake Country Club with our local sales rep, and we had some tournament meetings down there, and we took the 6 professionals out to the range, asked them to bring the drivers that they were currently hitting, and we put each of them on TrackMan. And, we had one that was Titleist, one that was Nike. We had a couple of our own staffers that were playing, our Big Bertha Fusion, and they consistently each gained anywhere between 18 and 23 yards with this new driver.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
I was personally in awe. I know, every manufacturer, has a launch, and, we all tout that it's going to be the next latest and greatest, but I can honestly say that I was flabbergasted at the distances these guys were getting with this new driver.
Wow. What an incredible feat.
Well, this changed my life.
Yeah. There you go, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you, Callaway.
Yeah, you've been wanting some more distance, Cindy. You said that. Let me ask you, Kathy, as well. And I want to switch just to the golf ball for a second, because a common question, I think, Cindy, I'm sure you've probably maybe had this question to you as well from some of your students. But with so many different golf balls, and I'm just talking, of course, within the Callaway brand, you've got so many different golf balls that have different functions, if you will. How does a golfer out there, how do they know what ball that is right for them? Because there are so many out there on the market now. How do they make that decision? And can they be fitted similarly to you would with golf clubs to play the right golf ball for you?
Yeah, and, I think Cindy will agree with me. I think you can get fit for a golf ball. There are different compressions, and, everybody has different needs to adapt to how their shot making is. So I do think you can get fit, for a golf ball. We do tout our Chrome Soft to be, the ball for everyone. It's greater on the greens. We do have a new X ball that has a little less spin. But I always tell people that I talk to, especially when I'm at a tournament or at Pro-Am, to go see their golf professional, because they're the experts in their particular swing and what their needs are. So LPGA or PGA professional, you should definitely check with them and get fit for the ball. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do almost all tour players use the Chrome Soft? So all the Callaway tour players.
Yes. I think
if they play a Callaway ball, do they play the Chrome Soft?
The majority of them are, or they're going in that direction for sure. Titleist has been the number one ball for many, many years, and we really just put a lot of R&D into our golf ball in the last 3 years. So I would say yes, that most of our players are moving to that Chrome Soft ball for sure.
Okay, cool.
Tell us a little bit about that specific ball. What's unique about it? What, based on some of the technology that's in it, and what some of the results that people that are already playing that particular ball are seeing? What is it doing for their game that they've noticed the difference in?
Well, I think again, it depends on your swing. It depends on your swing speed, but it is it's long, and it's also very soft around the greens, and it has to do with the technology within the ball. And it's not something that I'm super comfortable talking about. I'm more on the the tournament side, and I do a lot of partnership agreements with the events. So that technology speak, I kind of leave to our experts in the field as far as our our reps and our R&D guys. So I wouldn't want to say something that's not accurate about the ball. So I'll leave that to the experts.
Okay, that's fair enough. I agree. I agree. Leave things like that to the experts.
Absolutely.
What are some? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Cindy.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Sorry. Okay, so because you do the tournaments, okay, I think your job is really cool, and I think our listeners would think your job is really cool. So can you tell us, because you travel like all the time.
I do.
And your job is to make agreements with tour events. So if anyone's ever been lucky enough to play in a Pro-Am, you may have affected their life, yes?
Yes, that's correct. So my job
tell us
is
what you do.
Yeah, so my job is very unique, and there's probably 4 of us in the industry that do this, maybe a couple more. But it's in the equipment side, there was really just a couple of us. And what I do is I speak directly with the head organization, so PGA Tour, LPGA, Web.com, and we try to partner with them and assist their events on the Pro-Am side. So every tour event, and you don't see this on TV, and I think this is where it'll be educational for the viewers. Every event, most events have a Pro-Am. And, these are sponsors, local community businesses that really take the time to invest in the tournament, and they pay money to play in a Pro-Am. So, it's 3 or 4 people with one of the professionals. And, it gives them an opportunity to really interact with the tour players and give back to the community and give back to the tournament. So what we do is I'll go in with the tournament director and we'll talk about, what kind of gifting would we like to give these Pro-Am participants. And, one thing that is really important to me to make them understand is the fact that it is a golf tournament and they really need to support the manufacturers and the businesses that are supporting the tours. So often I go in and they go, oh, well, I'm going to give, an iPad. And my reasoning to them to use Callaway or any other golf brand is the importance of continuation of growing the game and supporting each other. When you go outside of the golf industry, you take away dollars from our industry. And we all know, we've struggled in the past 10 years in growing the game and really keeping this industry strong. So, my message today for all of those tournament directors out there is, support your manufacturers, support your golf professionals, keep it within our own family so that we can, continue to grow this great game. So that's really what I do.
What kind of items could be, I know, well, let me back up. Some of these Pro-Ams cost lots and lots of money, and businesses write it off because the money goes to a charitable cause typically, yes?
Correct.
So what would be a Pro-Am fee for an amateur, say, at a PGA Tour event?
So it can be anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000. It really depends on the event.
Per spot?
Per spot, yes. It can be very costly, absolutely.
Holy
and
cow.
So some of the gifting they receive, is really nice. Like we'll go in and, we'll do a driver fitting for everyone. We'll bring all the participants up on the range, get them individually fit, customize their driver for them, and then drop ship it to their house so when they get back, it's waiting for them. We do custom wedge fittings. We have a great relationship. Roger Cleveland has been with Callaway, since he sold his own Cleveland Golf Company, and he's our chief designer for our wedges. And we'll bring Roger on site. He'll do a tremendous clinic. He's so good with, the public. And we'll stamp everyone's initials on their wedge. We can do a ball fitting. We do putter fittings. Actually, that's where I met Cindy, was at the Women's PGA Championship last year, where we did a putter fitting for 300 of the most powerful women executives in the country who were attending the summit at the KPMG. And it was so much fun, and I think they all, loved their gift, and we actually gave them some putting tips to get them started. So, so we try to personalize it for each event depending on, how much time they have and what their budgets are. And, one thing I try to have them understand too is, Callaway is a powerful brand, and, we want to partner with them, and we know that it's about that week is about their brand. It's not about Callaway, but it's how we can use our assets and our name to help them raise the standard of their event. So just try to be a good partner. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Kathy. You had made a comment a few minutes ago about, with some of the challenges over the last decade for the golf industry. You obviously get a lot of feedback with the Callaway brand, what some of the trends are, and you kind of follow how the market goes. What has been, in your mind, over the last decade, where and I'm not necessarily talking about dollars here, I'm just talking about growth in the game with the Callaway brand? Has it been in the junior market? Has it been in the women's market or the men, or is it all pretty much even? Where are you seeing the biggest growth right now up to this point over the last decade in golf?
I think one of our big goals is to really get back to the grassroots of golf and focus on the golf professional and their membership. Women, definitely very important for us. It's a passion of mine. Cindy and I have had numerous conversations about engaging more women in the golf in golf, and how are we going to do that? And, she and I have shared some ideas. We have a big push within our organization right now to really cater to the juniors, from high school through, college. We really have a big push to connect with the up-and-coming generation. If we don't, golf's going to remain flat. We need to continue to work together, all organizations, the USGA, the PGA of America, the LPGA. We really need to, continue to put our heads together to figure out how to reach this, next generation. They're so, technologically savvy. They're so addicted to their video games and, instant gratification. And golf
right.
is a sport that, takes some patience and some time. So we really need to figure out, some different ways to connect with them and make golf fun and not a stodgy sport as, some juniors perceive it to be.
Tell us what you're doing with these kids, because I teach a lot of kids in that age group. So what can we do? How can we partner together and get these kids excited?
I think there's several things. I think, we need to continue to make it fun. I applaud the USGA for implementing that drive, chip, and putt, competition. I think that's phenomenal prior to the Masters. So much fun to watch. I know, I live in Atlanta, and I have a 10-year-old nephew, and he tries out for that every year. So I think we need to continue to implement things like that and, engage, the kids to join in the fun and can make it fun. Don't make it, such a tight competition that, it's not inclusive for everybody. I'd love to see us go in and do some more things in the inner city. I think First Tee's done a great job. Again, I'm hoping we can all put our heads together and come up with something. And I don't know what that something is. I think about it every day is, how can I be a mentor to a child or a group of children and get them more engaged in golf? Maybe that's through the Boys and Girls Club of America or Big Brothers and Big Sisters. But I think we need to continue to reach out to those organizations and get these kids involved. And we need to make it accessible.
Right.
I just moved from Florida, and I coached a First Tee team down there, boys and girls team. It was, a combination. And it was really difficult to find a golf course that would allow these kids to play 9 holes after school. So, we need to continue to push these golf professionals and these private golf clubs to allow these kids to have the opportunity to, learn the game.
You raise that's a fantastic point, by the way. You raise a very interesting point, Kathy, because I actually had heard a similar story in Florida, and I won't name the area, but that they were having that same difficulty. They had something around 1,300 kids involved in the First Tee program, but were having difficulty getting courses to sort of open their door. And I wonder if the clubs, I understand how the private clubs work, but I'm wondering if they're doing themselves a disservice by not opening those doors, because as you, I'm sure, are aware, and it's not in every case, but many of the private clubs across the nation, their memberships are dwindling as people age and, of course, pass on, and the next generation isn't falling in line as it did at one time. And there's going to come a point in time where some of these private clubs are going to end up closing the doors because they're not going to have anybody playing there. So I think it would almost be to their benefit, would it not, to open their door and get other programs coming in there and piquing that interest in some of these youngsters that maybe at some point down the road may choose to become a member at that particular facility.
I totally agree with you. I mean, we see it happening already. I mean, you just mentioned it. There are many golf clubs that have closed their doors already.
Sure.
So, one person I really want to mention who I admire, I don't know him well, but I was in Arizona for a while, is Brian Whitcomb. And Brian had a golf course in Arizona that was just for kids. And my son would have to call. Oh, he'd have to call and make a tee time. He'd have to make the tee time. The parents were not allowed to call and make a tee time. And then the parents could play for $5. And it was a little executive golf course, but the kids loved it. The pro shop was all kids apparel, and it was a phenomenal idea, and I would love to see that catch on in other communities around the country.
That's another great point, and actually I just had this conversation last week, very similar conversation. And, when I was growing up, before I got an opportunity to play out in what I would call a regular golf course, I was introduced through some of these executive courses that were in my area. They were very inexpensive compared to some of the regular courses, and it was a great learning. And I think I would like to see, I know there's still many around, but I think I would like to see more, especially in maybe areas like you said in the inner cities if they've got the ability to do so, and a very low, inexpensive way of introducing somebody into the game. And the other thing, too, is there's a lot of great ladies. We've had some on the show here that are doing initiatives within the school programs of introducing it into the schools. And I think Kathy, and maybe you would agree with this, I think there's a perception with a lot of youngsters out there that their perception is golf is, where all the professionals play, and I'm never going to play professional golf, so this isn't for me. It's not like, shooting hoops out in the in the park somewhere, or playing tennis on a public course. Their exposure to golf is what they see on TV, and I think we have to change that perception. That's one part of it, but that's not the only part of it. And I agree with what you said. I think we have to find a way of getting golf on a broader scale, and these are some of the women that are doing it, getting it into the education system, making it after-school programs. Do you see maybe Callaway and maybe even some of the other manufacturers out there getting more involved in something like that?
I would love to hear more about that. That's the first that I've heard about that. I would definitely, push Callaway to get involved in something like that. From my perspective, I grew up, I was an athlete. I played basketball and softball, and you're right about the perception of golf. I always thought, well, I'm never going to, I don't want to be a golf professional, and, golf's
right.
too expensive. It wasn't something that, my family could afford. So
right.
every once in a while we'd go and, I would caddy for my dad on the weekend, and I thought it was so boring. But as I sit, 40 years later in the position that I'm in, I'm so grateful to the mentors that I had who introduced me to the game and made me realize that, it's a fun sport, and it's also an opportunity to engage in corporate activity. There's a lot of
right.
business dealings that are done on the golf course. There's also, friendships to be made. I have friends all across the country just because of golf. And when I was younger, I would have never in a million years thought that. And, the other thing is golf is something you can play your entire life. My basketball career ended when, I blew out my knee, and, that was the end of it. I was done. So I'm so grateful to, my mentors who introduced me to the game and have really pushed me to, continue in the sport, in the industry. So I'm very thankful.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Kathy. I mean, a lot of other sports, especially high-impact sports, there comes a point in time that reality checks in, and we realize we can't, do them to the same level, and whether it be for injury or other reasons. But golf is something that people can play well into their 90s, if they so choose. So it's really a game for all ages. But as I said earlier, and you support, I think there is that perception out there that golf is, number one, it's too expensive, obviously, but it's for sort of an elite category of players. And it goes back to what Cindy always talks about, why am I here? Why do I want to play? Well, not everybody wants to be a tour player. Some people want to just go out and have fun, and there's so many opportunities and business opportunities, as you just eloquently pointed out. But I think really, in order to really help grow golf, there's going to be two areas. I think family golf, number one, is going to be another area, getting families reconnected in something that they can do together, but also getting it in from a grassroots standpoint into the school systems and getting it as part of that after school, initially, and maybe into more, in depth as time goes on. But there's a lot of kids that go to school. As I said, the only avenue or exposure to golf is what they see on TV. They never see it in their own school system. So why are they going to want to go out and play a game that they're not exposed to? But they are other sports.
Well, and one other. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'm done. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, one other point I wanted to make about the school system is, what a great sport to incorporate into a non-bullying campaign. Golf's about etiquette. It's about politeness. It's about, congratulating each other. It's about accepting, each other for our abilities and our non-abilities. And I think it's a great sport to marry with a non-bullying campaign. Basketball and contact sports are I don't want to say they're the opposite and they promote bullying, but they're aggressive.
They're an aggressive sport.
And,
yes.
Right. And I think you learn that aggression. And I mean, I know I did. I was very competitive and a very aggressive player. And golf is the complete opposite. And it's fun to go out and play with people of all abilities. I'll play with LPGA Tour players, and I can go play with somebody who's just learning. And, it's just an enjoyable day either way because of the handicap system and because of the, interaction with each other. I think it's a great sport to start at that school age level that teaches them that, you can be involved in a sport. You don't have to be, an LPGA Tour player, and, you can compete at your own pace, be accepted, and, learn that bullying is just not acceptable at any level, in sports or in school.
Exactly.
Well, and what's funny is typically it's the quiet little person that can be, the tortoise and the hare, and the tortoise can end up winning. And so
exactly right.
Agree with you. Yeah, I'm married to that person who played on tour for 15 years. Can't catch a ball, but played in the Masters 5 times, And everybody laughs, and it's like, don't be laughing at Alan because he's deadly. So how can we do this? Let's do something. I want to change the world.
You know what, Cindy? You and I talk about this all the time. How can we change the world? And I would love to see a roundtable or a summit of some of the top leaders in the industry, especially women. Like Donna Oranger and Susie Whaley and Sandy Cross and yourself, and I would love for us to all get together.
We need to do that.
That would be phenomenal. Kate Cunningham. I mean, the list goes on and on. Gail Graham's a former LPGA Tour player, a very good friend of mine. She loves working with the kids. She's phenomenal. If we could all sit down and put our heads together, I think we could really come up with something phenomenal.
I think we really could.
And I agree. Let me just throw 2 additional names in there because they're currently running some great junior programs that are not geared for, funneling into tours. I mean, obviously, maybe at some point, maybe some of the people that are involved, some of the kids involved may aspire to be that one day. But 2 great ladies up in New York. First one, Kate Tempesta, who's been a guest on. She actually takes kids out to Central Park and has some different games and things that they, golf-related out there. So obviously even in a big city there's weight, and she's been doing it very successfully. And the other one is out in South Carolina, Nicole Weller, who, Cindy, I know you're familiar with, does some great junior programming out there as well, very passionate about it. So they would be 2 great ladies to maybe include in your panel. I think I'd like to make a suggestion for you guys to consider, because I've thought about this at length as well. Obviously, you can't just sort of bust through the doors and just offer all of these different programs. But maybe there's a way that initially that maybe Callaway, as an example, and maybe the LPGA could create a program where, and I'm not talking necessarily the golf professionals out on tour. I'm talking about professionals like Cindy, where they could work out some sort of a schedule that they could go into the school systems in their area and actually do everything from talking about golf, the importance of golf, how it benefits the communities, some of the charities that benefit from golf, and educate them that it's not just about hitting great golf shots, how much the tours and how much the players and all of the people involved in golf give back to their local communities. And I think people, especially in the school system, would be very surprised. And then educate them about golf, that it's not just some stodgy old sport that is for aging old, retired men down in Florida, that it's so much more and how much it's grown. And I think an education program that way to start, in conjunction with a great manufacturer like Callaway, might be a way to get your foot in the door and see what happens from there. Just a thought.
I like it. I think it's a phenomenal idea.
Kathy, let me ask you, with all the other programs, because there's programs everywhere, okay? There's PGA Junior League, LPGA Girls Golf, the First Tee. What are we missing? What needs to be different, and what's missing?
Well, I think Ted hit it on. He hit it on the head. I think we need to start with the school systems, because the First Tee and the some of the other programs you just mentioned are outside of the scope of the school system. So
right.
You have to have parents that are willing or able to take their kids to these programs. When you start with the school systems, the kids are there already. They have to go to school. So I think it's a great starting point. And whether the kids filter into the First Tee program or the PGA of America's program, I just think it's a great starting point for launching something like this and getting them interested in the game.
Now, would Callaway be willing to help? Would they create new clubs? Would they use the junior sets you already have? Because I know the sets are like from 5 to 9 and 10 to 14, right? Is that how the sets come?
Yeah, and I think that's running before we walk. I think we have to walk first and come up with a program before we move into what equipment does every child need, and because I think that goes back to some economic factors within their family life. So there's ways to get clubs in kids' hands, and I think if it was a viable program and something that was that helped grow the game, Callaway would certainly look at it. Because they want to be involved in starting with these kids and getting them interested in the game. So I think we need to put the program together first, and I think that there are ways to get some clubs in kids' hands for sure.
I guess what I'm asking is, would you teach the phys ed teacher that's currently there? Would you have to teach them how to teach, or would you bring in professionals to run an after-school program? What do you think's best?
I think it would be best to bring in a professional. I really do. Unless you have a phys ed teacher that is an avid golfer and wants to learn and be involved in that, I think it's a program that's kind of outside of the it's outside of the education curriculum, but that is introduced at the school level at the schools.
And how would we fund that? Because the school's probably not going to pay for the program.
No, again, I think, we need to rely on the local golf professionals, and corporate donations. Absolutely.
Okay.
Let me just interject one thought and just kind of what you said a few moments ago, Kathy and Cindy as well. I think we got to be careful, and I think one of the problems has sort of been putting that cart before the horse. It's great to get the clubs in the hand, but I think first and foremost we need to put a bug in their ear. We need to get them interested in golf first, and those will flock. They'll find a way. If there's a will, there's a way. People will gravitate. The First Tee and all these other great programs are great, but those are people that are already exposed to golf, that have an interest in golf, and they're coming out to these different programs to partake. But there's many, many kids that have never had any exposure, and I think the first step, in my opinion, would be let's educate them about golf, what golf is about. It's not just, as I said earlier, and educate them first before we jump in with all these great programs. Because schools, if they feel the program is viable, they will somehow work it into a budget. They will find ways of budgeting, and even if it takes outside corporate help, and that's a great selling point to the corporate, is if they want to grow their businesses, as you said earlier, Kathy, with corporate golf and things like that, what a great way for them to get involved in the school system to give back. So there's ways that Callaway and the golf professionals can partner with other corporations in helping fund some of these programs. But I think first and foremost, I think we need to get into these systems and show them some models outside, not necessarily First Tee, but some of these other where they're just exposing kids to golf, not necessarily putting equipment in their hand, but exposing them to the game and educating some of the benefits that they can get from golf, both in the industry and outside the industry in a personal situation, and then let the sort of, nature take its course from there. I think that would be maybe a better way to approach it rather than just, running a bunch of after-school programs, because, again, not every kid's going to qualify for that, and not every kid is maybe going to have the resources or the parents. And the schools aren't just going to put it in their budget if they don't feel there's something in it for them. So I think we need to educate them, and I think a way to do that is to have somebody like Cindy and many others in her field go into the schools and have these discussions, in a presentation format, and then let it go from there and let the school boards and systems decide, hey, this is something we would like to have in our school system.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I completely agree with you. I think there needs to be an introduction to the game. And, it's kind of why I brought up the bullying campaign that's going on right now. I think it ties in nicely with that campaign, and I think that is such a priority for the school systems right now, that, to have somebody come in and be part of that and introduce golf and talk more about life skills and what golf, can do for them, not only as a sport, but as a stress reliever, as a way to make new friends, to be involved in a sport that's not, you don't have to have a ton of coordination. It's a different avenue to move forward in life. And, to be involved in something that you do see on TV that could be, possibly in your business life, could be in your college life. It's a life skill. It really is.
Right. The other thing, and just lastly, because we've got to wrap up, but one of the other things too that might be an option as well is having sort of a school outing, at certain levels of take the kids on a date, not a day trip, but like a class trip to a golf facility, to a golf course, and expose them to the course and what's involved, and they do all kinds of trips. They go to the zoos and they go to all different things. Why not introduce them to the golf industry? In that
That's a great idea.
That might be another way to do it, because that's very inexpensive. I mean, it doesn't cost that much to organize the school buses, and having them go out to the golfing community and outreach that way, and then have something ahead planned at the whether it be a clinic again or some other function going on at the golf course, so they're not just looking at the greens and the grass grow, but they've got something there to keep their interest and pique their interest. So just some things to think about, and I think that would be a great way to initiate golf into the school system. Just some of the things, and I'm sure you guys, if you get your panels together and have some discussion, you come up with some other great ideas as well. But on that note, we've got to wrap up our discussion. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But Kathy, we want to thank you very much for coming on and joining Cindy and I this morning on the Women of Golf Show. We really appreciate your input and all the hard work that you do, and we would love to have you come back again maybe sometime in the new year where we can have some other further discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I would love to come back.
We would love to have you.
Thank you, Cindy.
And we're excited to see about the new driver when we go down to the PGA show. So keep an eye out for that for those of you that are going to be heading down later in January. But Kathy, again, thank you very much for joining Cindy and I this morning, and have a great holiday season. And we'll be in touch, and we look forward to having you come back and join us again on the Women of Golf.
Thank you both, and happy holidays to you both as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was our very special guest, Kathy Grayson, and I know we ran a few minutes over, and I apologize for that. And Cindy, I know you've got to go as well as I, but again, we want to thank a very special guest from the Callaway Golf brand, Kathy Grayson. She's a sales manager of the tournament division for Callaway, and has lots of great ideas and lots of fun things going on at Callaway and exciting things happening. And on behalf of Cindy and I, we want to thank her again. But we also want to thank you as we wind down the 2016 season and get prepared for next year. We'll be coming back, I believe, the second week of January, the second Tuesday in January after a long break through the holidays. and we'll have some great guests and some other great interesting topics, and we hope that you enjoyed the 2016 season. And in the meantime, during the holidays, if you have a chance, we would love to hear from you. We would love for you to reach out to both Cindy and I. Cindy is cindy@cindymillergolf.com, and I, of course, is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com is my email. Reach out to us with your thoughts. Maybe you have some individuals that you'd like to have as guests on the show, or maybe there's specific topics that we haven't covered yet, or we have covered, maybe didn't get as in-depth as you would like. Please let us know what you'd like to hear from us on the show, and we'll do our best to put those together. But again, on behalf of Cindy Miller and I, thank you very much to all the listeners from around the world for tuning in faithfully each week to the Women of Golf. Happy holidays, everybody, and God bless, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next year. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Ted. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.